अतनीचोच्चताकर भानमञ्च कदाचिन् मां प्रेम सत्कण्ठयोस्फुरा। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। श्रीकान्तिपुन्त्रि समाहुता भीष्मक कन्यया ये श्रेयस्वर्णेन भूषयैषाम् गान्धर्ववृत्त्या मिषतां स्वभागं जह्रे पदं मूर्ध्नि दधत्सु पर्णः। Attracted by the beauty and fortune of Rukmini, the daughter of King Bhishmaka, many great princes and kings assembled to marry her. But Lord Krishna, stepping over the other hopeful candidates, carried her away as his own share, as Garuda carried away nectar. Madhvacharya has a variant really. Sridhar Swami. भीष्मकन्यया रुक्मिण्या ये राजानः समाहुताः ह्रस्वत्वमार्षं समाहृता इति पाठे आकृष्टा इत्यर्थः. Sometimes instead of samahutaah, samahritah appears, which indicates that these kings were attracted by the beauty and fortune of Rukmini Devi. Samahuta means they were invited for the Swayamvara, or invited for the wedding actually. She was supposed to be wedded to Shishupal. केन साधनेन श्रियः लक्ष्म्याः सवर्णेन समानेन रूपेण. यद्यपि तया केवलं श्रीकृष्ण एव आहूत न सर्वे. Even though she only invited Sri Krishna, not everyone, tathapi tasyaah lavanyam tesham agamane hetuhu. But her charm was such that became the cause of the others' arrival. Iti tayeva ahuta iti uchyate. Therefore it is said that they were invited. Yesham shatam pashatam znipadam tadhat taya saha gandharva vitya परस्पर समय रूपया उभूषया भवितुमिच्छया जहार. So through Gandharva Vritti, Lord Krishna kidnapped Rukmini Devi. Gandharva Vritti means by a mutual agreement. Samaya, paraspara samaya. I guess it's like this. कथम भूताम स्वभागम लक्ष्म्यंशवत्. Amshatvat. She was his own share because she is Lakshmi Amsha. Lakshmi Amsha superficially means she was an Amsha of Lakshmi, but it can also mean as a Bahuvrihi, she whose Amsha was Lakshmi. Taya Swatmanaha Arpitatvacha. And she had offered herself to Lord Krishna. Suparnaha, Supatana, Yadva Suparneva, Subhagam Sudham Ityarthaha. Yadva Shriyah Rukminyaha Samanam. Varnadvayam Vachikam Yasya Shriyah Savarnaha Rukmini. The word Savarnena also can refer to Rukmini because Rukmini and Rukmini are beginning with the same set of letters. Tena Samahuta Shishupala Adaya. So Shishupala and others were called by Rukmini. Kimartham, why Bhishmakakanyaya saha tesham bhubhushya bhutirbhavattu ityetadartham. Why did he call Shishupala and others? So that she would marry Shishupala and there would be prosperity तत्र शिशुपालस्य आह्वानं वरत्वेन बुभूषया जरासन्ध आदिनां तद्विवाह उत्सवेन. So here he called Shishupala as the uh, bridegroom, as future bridegroom. Jarasandha and others were called to participate in the marriage festivities. भीष्मकन्यया या बुभूषा तया इति द्विअधिकरण एव तृतीयाद्वयं स्वभागं श्रीनिरूपं जहार. भीष्मकन्यया षष्ठी अर्थे तृतीया. भीष्मकन्या रुक्मिण्या श्रियः साक्षात् लक्ष्म्याः. रुक्मिणी is साक्षात् लक्ष्मी. समानौ वर्णौ द्वौ रुक्मी इति अक्षरद्वयं वाचिकं यस्य तेन रुक्मिणा येन राजानः समाहृता तत्सत्त्वम् आर्षम्. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur gives the same explanation that Rukmi has two aksharas, the same as in Rukmini. Samahita iti pathe samanita iti artha. If the reading Samahita is accepted, then it indicates that they were brought, all these princesses were brought to that place. Esham Ragyam Murjani Padam Tadhat Suparnaha Garuda Sudhamiva. And Lord Krishna stepped over their heads like Garuda when he had to take away the Sudha, the celestial nectar that comes in the first canto of Mahabharata. Swabhagam Nim Jahare Esham Kidrishanam Gandharve Vivahe Yavritihi Taya Shishupalasya Varatvena Nesham Varayatratvena Yadvaranam Tena Vidyartaha. So here Shishupala was the Vara, desired bridegroom. And the others were part of his party. Rushaya aham vara iti vayam prayatra iti bhavitumicchaya mishata. So they were all having all these ideas. Oh, I am the bridegroom. Shishupala was thinking like that. And the others were thinking, we are on the side of the bridegroom. So while they were thinking like that and watching, Kadachit Krishna aganti kanyam apahare ityataha itah tataha sachakitam pasyatam. And they were always thinking that suddenly Krishna might come and steal away this virgin girl. And therefore they were watching here and there. Mishatam, watching. This Rukmini, the daughter of King Bhishmaka, was actually as attractive as fortune itself because she was as valuable as gold, both in color and in value. Since the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, is a property of the Supreme Lord, Rukmini was actually meant for Lord Krishna. But Shishupala was selected as her bridegroom by Rukmini's elder brother. Although King Bhishmaka wanted his daughter to be married to Krishna, Rukmini invited Krishna to take her away from the clutches of Shishupala. So when the bridegroom Shishupala came there with his party, with the desire to marry Rukmini, Krishna all of a sudden swept her from the scene, stepping over the heads of all the princes there, just as Garuda carried away nectar from the hands of the demigods. The incident of Krishna's kidnapping Rukmini will be clearly explained in the 10th canto. And it is there in Krishna book. 4. Kudmino vidhan nasodamitva swayamvare nagna jithinuvaha yad bhagnamanan api gridhyato gyan jaghne kshata shastra vritasva shastrai. By subduing 7 bulls whose noses were not pierced, the Lord achieved the hand of Princess Nagnajiti in the open competition to select a bridegroom. Although the Lord was victorious, his competitors asked the hand of the princess, and thus there was a fight. Well equipped with weapons, the Lord killed or wounded all of them, but he was not hurt himself. Why is this Kakut Mataha? वृषभान् अविद्धन्नासिकान् विद्धन्नासिकान् कृत्वा इति वा तैः वृषभैः तद्दमनेन च भग्नः मानः येषां भग्नमानान् is actually meant to be like this. Many had come for this particular competition, but their pride was broken. They were disappointed. येषां तथापि तान् गृध्यतः काम्यमानान्. But still they were greedy for अत एव अज्ञाशास्त्रभृतः राज्ञः तच्छस्त्रैः अक्षत एव गन्हार. So the Supreme Lord he fought with them with his weapons. Svesham Arjunadinam Shastraihi Jagni. The Lord was accompanied by Arjuna and others. Teshu Swaprabhava Aveshat Swayameva Jaghana Ityartha. He was the one who had invested his powerful influence in them. Therefore, it is said, he himself killed. Gandhi Kalayamati Sri Dashama Samvadaya Itham Vyakhyayate. There will be a reference to this, that the wielder of the Gandiva, Gandivi Alayamasa, that he was involved in this. Fine. Priyam Prabhu Gramya Eva Priyaya Vidhitsuraksha Jutarum Yadarthe Vajrayadravatam Sagano Rushandha Kridam Rigo no Namayam Vadhunam Duktarum Duktarum. Today Ekadashi. Okay. Just to please his dear wife, the Lord brought back the Parijata tree from heaven, just as an ordinary husband would do. But Indra, the king of heaven, induced by his wives, henpecked as he was, ran after the Lord with full force to fight him. Yada adityaha kundale datum swargam gataha. When the Lord went to Swarga to give Aditi her earrings, tada Prabhu swatantraha api gramya stri paratantra iva priyaya satyabhamaya priyam vijatam ichuhu. Even though the Supreme Lord is independent, like uh, an ordinary henpecked husband, he wanted to make his beloved Satyabhama Devi happy. Dyutaram Parijatam Anitava. So at that time, he brought the Parijata, which was a heavenly tree. Yadartha Yannimittam Tam Krishnam Vajri Sri Preritaha Yodhum Anbadhavat. For which sake the wielder of the Vajra weapon, that is Indra, impelled by his wife Sachi, he chased Krishna in order to fight with him. Obviously, not just Sachi, all the other wives, everybody would have got into this. So, Karya Sadhakena, Tena Yuddhodyamaha, Tasya Yukta eva. But it is inappropriate. That it is only for his purpose that Krishna had actually come to Swarga. It was for Indra's purpose. And then fighting with Krishna himself. Kridamraga. Therefore, he is described as a Kridamraga. I am Vajri. This Vajri, this Indra, He was Kridamruga. He was um, a play doll for his wives. Gramyaha ami vad drishyamanaha api vastutah priyaya prematyaha priyam premna ipsitam yattad viditsuho yadarthe dyuttaram archad. Jiva Goswami is now beginning to contrast the situation between Krishna and Indra. Lord Krishna appeared to be Gramya, like a kami, just like an ordinary lusty husband. Vastutha, in reality, he just wanted to make his wife happy out of selfless affection because she was filled with selfless affection for him. That's all. Therefore, he got the Dyutaru, the heavenly tree. Vajri tu Atmanusarena tam anyatha matva eva adravat. But Vajri, he considered that Krishna was like himself. He misunderstood that. He took it otherwise. And he ran after Krishna. Anyatha maranam evaha. And that contrary way of thinking is what is brought out here. Ayam Krishna vadhunam saundarya matra lobhena speakratanam kamininam nunam kridamurga kama vashaiti. That this Krishna, he is greedy. He has become greedy out of the beauty of his brides, his wives, young wives, who are themselves filled with so many desires. Therefore, he is a Kridamurga. He is under the control of lust. Tatra hetu andha iti. He himself was blind, Indra. Tatrapi hetu vadhunam shatyadinam Kridamurga. Because actually Indra is the one who is a Kridamurga of his young wives, headed by Shachi. यथा आत्मन्मन्यते जगदिति न्यायेन वधूनां सत्यभामादीनाम् अयं क्रीडामृग इति निन्दन् एव अद्रवत्. And then he thinks that the whole world is like himself. So he thought that Krishna himself is a play doll for Satyabhama and other young wives of Lord Krishna. So criticizing Krishna, he chased Krishna. The Lord once went to the heavenly planet to present an earring to Aditi, the mother of the demigods, and his wife Satyabhama also went with him. There's a special flowering tree called Parijata, which grows only in the heavenly planets. And Satyabhama wanted this tree. Just to please his wife, like an ordinary husband, the Lord brought back the tree, and this enraged Vajri, or the controller of the thunderbolt. Indra's wives inspired him to run after the Lord to fight, and Indra, because he was a henpecked husband and also a fool, listened to them and dared to fight with Krishna. He was a fool on this occasion because he forgot that everything belongs to the Lord. There was no fault on the part of the Lord, even though he took away the tree from the heavenly kingdom. But because Indra was henpecked, dominated by his beautiful wives like Shachi, he became a fool, just as all persons who are dominated by their wives are generally foolish. Okay.
Hare Krishna, bro.
Yes.
Yes. Bro, in Bhagavatam, in 8th canto, there is a description of heavenly planet. There, it is said that only those who are free from lust, greed, envy, they can enter heaven. So how can we understand that even the demigods are having this
No, there are
capacity?
different degrees of lust. Those who lust over others' wives and all that, they are not allowed to enter the heavenly planets. So from that perspective, they know those who don't have lust, they cannot enter Amravati. Indra himself is very well known. The demigods, they all have apsaras, no? So that is there. Okay, let's continue. Indra thought that Krishna was a henpecked husband who only by the will of his wife Satyabhama took away the property of heaven, and therefore he thought that Krishna could be punished. He forgot that the Lord is the proprietor of everything and cannot be henpecked. The Lord is fully independent, and by his will only he can have hundreds and thousands of wives like Satyabhama. He was not therefore attached to Satyabhama because she was a beautiful wife, but he was pleased with her devotion service and thus wanted to reciprocate the unalloyed devotion of his devotee. Satyabhama is Radharani's expansion. Rukmini is Chandravali's expansion. Sutam hridhekam vapushagasantam drishtva sunabhon mathitam dharitya amantritastat-tanayaya shesham datva tadantah puramavivesha. Rakasura, the son of Dharitri, the earth, tried to grasp the whole sky. And for this he was killed by the Lord in a fight. His mother then prayed to the Lord. This led to the return of the kingdom to the son of Narakasura, and thus the Lord entered the house of the demon. Sunabhena chakrena unmachitah sutam bhaumam drishtva tasya matra dharitya. Actually, he was his own son. Narakasura was the Lord's son. Dharitri is Bhumi Devi. Sutam bhauvam drishtva tasya matra dharitriya bhumya amantrita prarthita samnas tasya tanayaya bhagadattaya dhrutashesham rajyam dattva. Sutam narakasuram. अत्र शुद्धमाता पितृकस्य अपि तस्य बाणासुरसङ्घादेव कुबुद्धिः. So even though his mother and father were very pure, by the association of Banasura, it was only by the association of Banasura, Kubuddhihi, he became a person of evil intelligence. Iti asadhu sangha mahima prastave puranantara katha gyeya. So from another Purana, which discusses the topic of the great effect of associating with sadhus, unsaintly persons. This is brought out. And this should be understood in that manner. I thought there's a question from what is this henpecked husband? Henpecked husband means a person who is a devotee of his wife. It's called a henpecked husband. It is said in other Puranas that Narakasura was the son of Dharitri, the earth, by the Lord himself. But he became a demon due to the bad association of Bana, another demon. An atheist is called a demon. It's a fact that even a person born of good parents can turn into a demon by bad association. Birth is not always a criterion of goodness. Unless and until one is trained in the culture of good association, one cannot become good. 7. Tatra hrita sta naradeva kanya kujena drishtva harimarta bandhum utthaya sadyo jagrihu praharsha vridanuraga prahitavalokais. There in the house of the demon, all the princesses kidnapped by Narakasura at once became alert upon seeing the Lord, the friend of the distressed. They looked upon him with eagerness, joy, and shyness and offered to be his wives. Tatra antapure kujena bhaumena ya ahlita. So Bhaumasura had actually kidnapped all these girls. Prahasya Vrida cha Anuraga cha Taihi Prahita Prerita Ye Avalogastai Prasritutavatyaha. Mamayameva Vara iti Pratyekam Svichakru. Each girl considered that now he is going, he is the one who should marry me. He is meant to be my bridegroom. Narakasura kidnapped many daughters of great kings and kept them imprisoned in his palace. But when he was killed by the Lord and the Lord entered the house of the demon, all the princesses were enlivened with joy and offered to become his wives because the Lord is the only friend of the distressed. Unless the Lord accepted them, there would be no chance of their being married because the demon kidnapped them from their father's custody, and therefore no one would agree to marry them. According to Vedic society, girls are transferred from the custody of the father to the custody of the husband. Since these princesses had already been taken away from the custody of their fathers, it would have been difficult for them to have any husband other than the Lord himself. 8. आसा मुहूर्त एकस्मिन् नानागारेषु योषितां सविधं जगृहे पाणीन् अनुरूपस्वमायया. All those princesses were lodged in different apartments, and the Lord simultaneously assumed different bodily expansions, exactly matching each and every princess. He accepted their hands in perfect rituals by his internal potency. Asam yushitam panins tattat anurupastan savidham vivaha uchita prakara sahitam yatha bhavati. So Krishna married them according to proper rituals. And he assumed various forms exactly in line with those particular wives. Swamaya achinti chaktiya savidhim iti punyaranya. Punyaranya is remarked. Punyaranya was a Mayavadi follower of Shankaracharya. It looks like his commentary on Bhagavatam was intact. Still, actually, Baladev Vidyabhushanam, no, I think it's Jiva Goswami. He writes that by looking at Punyaranya's commentary only, Madhvacharya gave his commentary on Bhagavatam. Anyway, Punyaranya says something very interesting here. Swamaya achinti chaktiya. And the Lord's, by his Maya means by his inconceivable spiritual potency. Savidham vivaha uchita prakara sahitam swamaya yogamaya sushtu amayaya iti. It's another explanation. Swamaya means by yogamaya. It also means very nicely without deceiving anyone. The Lord married all these princesses. There is something in the chat box here. What is the system in household life? Wife has to serve only husband. Husband should not serve wife. Husband should take care of the wife. He should make her happy. Just like parents are meant to take care of the children. Children are supposed to obey the parents. Of course, the parents are meant to be obedient to Krishna. So husband is meant to be obedient to Krishna. And he's supposed to take care of his wife. In the Brahma Samhita 533, the Lord is described as follows in regard to his innumerable plenary expansions. Advaitam achyutam anadam anantarupam adyam purana purusham navayauvanam cha vedeshu durlabham adurlabham atmabhakto govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. The Lord Govinda, whom I worship, is the original personality of God. He is not different from his innumerable plenary expansions, who are all infallible, original, and unlimited, and who have eternal forms. Although he is primeval, the oldest personality, is always fresh and young. By his internal potency, the Lord can expand himself into various personalities of Swayam Prakash and again into Prabhava and Vaibhava forms, and all of them are non-different from one another. The forms into which the Lord expanded to marry the princesses in different apartments were all slightly different to match each and every one of them. They are called Vaibhava Vilasa forms of the Lord and are effected by his internal potency, Yogamaya. 9. तास्वपत्यान्यजनयद् आत्मतुल्यानि सर्वतः एकैकस्यां दश दश प्रकृतिर्विभूषया. Just to expand himself according to his transcendental features, the Lord begot in each and every one of them 10 offspring with exactly his own qualities, 10 boys. They were like him does not mean in every manner they were like him, but in some ways they were like him. Madhvacharya refers to Agneya, Purana. Sarvatah, sarvai gunaihi swatulyani prakritirmaya vividham bhavanam vistarah tadichaya yadva prakritirhito vividham bhavitum ichaya. He wanted to do good to everyone, and therefore he expanded by having so many children, so many boys. Prakrite swarupasya eva vaibhava ichchaya. He had a desire to expand his personal glories. Prakritischa swarupamcha swabhavascha ityamara. Because the thesaurus by Amara clearly explains that Prakriti means nature, characteristic. व्याख्यातं च टीकाकृद्भिः पंचमे प्रकृतिं भजस्व इति अत्र प्रकृतिं स्वरूपमिति. And that meaning is taken by Srila Sridhar Swami in his commentary to 5.1.19. कालं माघद शाल्वादीन् अनीकैरुन्धतः पुरम् अजीघनत् स्वयं दिव्यं स्वपुंसां तेज आदिशत्. Kalayavana, the king of Magadha and Shalva, attacked the city of Mathura. But when the city was encircled by their soldiers, the Lord refrained from killing them personally, just to show the power of his own men. Kalaha, Kalayavana. Rundhata, Avrinvataha. So they had surrounded Mathura. Notice that this is not in chronological order. He's not speaking in chronological order. मुचुकुंद भीम आदिभिः निमित्तमात्रैः स्वयं एव अजीखन घातितवान्. So the Lord had them killed by Muchukunda, Bhima, and others. Kalayavana through Muchukunda, Jarasandha through Bhima. Tena cha swapumsam tejaha prabhavam kirtim va dattavan. So in that way, he gave glorification to his own people, or he gave them his own powers to execute all this. Swayam iti sakshadeva kutrachit tu tatra tatra aveshena ityartha. So in some cases, the Supreme Lord personally, in some cases, he empowered others. After the death of Kamsa, when Mathura was encircled by the soldiers of Kalayavana, Jarasandha, and Shalva, the Lord seemingly fled from the city, and thus he is known as Ranachora. That is the actual Sanskrit name, Ranachora. Ranchor is a common Gujarati name, Hindi also. Rana, R-A-N dot A-C-O-R-A. Or one who fled from fighting. Actually, the fact was that the Lord wanted to kill them through the agency of his own men, devotees like Muchukunda and Bhima. Kalayavana and the king of Magadha were killed by Muchukunda and Bhima respectively, who acted as agents of the Lord. By such acts, the Lord wanted to exhibit the prowess of his devotees, as if he were personally unable to fight, but his devotees could kill them. The relationship of the Lord with his devotees is a very happy one. Actually, the Lord descended at the request of Brahma in order to kill all the undesirables of the world. But to divide the share of glory, he sometimes engaged his devotees to take the credit. The battle of Kurukshetra was designed by the Lord himself. But just to give credit to his devotee Arjuna, Nimittamatram Bhavasabhyasachin played the part of the charioteer, while Arjuna was given the chance to play the fighter and thus become the hero of the battle of Kurukshetra. What he wants to do himself by his transcendental plans, he executes through his confidential devotees. That is the way of the Lord's mercy towards his pure, unalloyed devotees. 11. Shambaram vidambanam murambal valamevacha anyascha dantavakradeen avadhit kamscha ghatayat. Of kings like Shambharat, Vividha, Banam, Mura, Balvala, and many other kings such as Dantavakra, some he killed himself, and some he caused to be killed by others. Shambharat, Vividha, Balvalan, Anyan api kamschet, Pradyumna, Ramadhibi, Ghatayat, Aghatayat, Ghatayan nitiva pata, Dantavakradin Swayam avadhi. So some he had killed through Pradyumna, Balarama, and so on. Some, like Dantavakra, he himself killed. Shambaram iti yudmukham. Texts 11 and 12 come together. Shambharadina ghatayat, Banadina avadhir, iti yatha yogam yujjam. Shambara and others were killed. Yes, whereas Bana and others were uh, defeated. Avadhit, Avadhit, Avadhit also means killed. Bana was as good as killed. Bana was protected by Lord Shiva, though, but he was as good as killed. अच्छा तो कामशे नृपां घातय दित्ति. Okay. 12. अथ थे भ्रातृपुत्राणां पक्षयोः पतितान् नृपान् चचालभूः कुरुक्षेत्रं येषामापततां बलैः. Then, no Vidura, the Lord caused all the kings, both the enemies and those on the side of your fighting nephews, to be killed in the battle of Kurukshetra. All those kings were so great and strong that the earth seemed to shake as they traversed the war field. नृपान् घातयदित्य अनुषङ्गः कथं भूतान् कुरुक्षेत्रमापततां गच्छतां येषां बलैः सैन्यैः भूः सर्वापि चचालचकम्पे. पतितानिति स्वयं पृथ्वी भारभूतत्वेन कांश्चित् पक्षगामित्वेन च कांश्चित् रक्षणीयेभ्यः च्युतान् इत्यर्थः. Some of these, okay, regarding being a burden on the earth, some of them were on his own side, were burdens on the earth, and some had fallen away from being fit to be protected by him. कांशे कीदृशान्ते तव भ्रातृपुत्राणां युधिष्ठिरादीनां दुर्योधनादीनां च पक्षयोः पतितान् प्राप्तान् कुरुक्षेत्रम् आपतताम् आगच्छतां येषां बलैः सैन्यैः भूः सर्वापि चचालचकम्पे. So the situation was such that the earth itself shook when they had all assembled together. 13. Sakarana dushasana sauvalanam kumantrapakena hatashriyaयुषम् सुयोधनं सानुच्चरम् शय्यानं भग्नोरुमुर्व्यां ननन्द पश्यन्. Duryodhana was bereft of his fortune and duration of life because of the intricacy of ill advice given by Karna, Dushasana, and Saubala. When he lay on the ground with his followers, his thighs broken, although he was powerful, the Lord was not happy to see the scene. That's why it's important to study Srimad Bhagavatam after studying Mahabharata, because then we understand the actual reality. Sir Krishna, हताश्री आयुः च यस्य भग्नावोरु यस्य तम उर्व्यां शयान पश्यनपि न नन्द संतोषं न प्राप. Shri Krishna पश्यनपि न नन्द. The fall of Duryodhana, the leading son of Dhritarashtra, was not pleasing to the Lord. Although he was on the side of Arjuna, it was he who advised Bhima to break the thighs of Duryodhana while the fight was going on. The Lord is constrained to award punishment upon the wrongdoer, but he is not happy to award such punishments because the living entities are originally his parts and parcels. He is harder than the thunderbolt for the wrongdoer and softer than the rose for the faithful. The wrongdoer is misled by bad associates and by ill advice, which is against the established principles of the Lord's order. Thus he becomes subject to punishment. The surest path to happiness is to live by the principles laid down by the Lord and not disobey his established laws, which are enunciated in the Vedas and Puranas for the forgetful living entities. 14. कियान् भवोऽयं क्षपितोरुभारो यद्द्रोण भीष्मार्जुन भीम मूलैः अष्टादशाक्षौहिणिको मदंशैः आस्ते बलं दुर्विषहं यदूनाम्. After the end of the battle of Kurukshetra, the Lord said, the abatement, removal of the earth's great burden, 18 Akshohinis, has now been effected with the help of Drona, Bhishma, Arjuna, and Bhima. But what is this? There is still the great strength of the Yadu dynasty, born of myself, which may be a more unbearable burden. This is the beginning of the 11th canto. Anabhinandana prakarameva kyaniti. So this is now a description of how Krishna was unhappy. द्रोणादिभिर्मूलैः कारणभूतैः यदिति यः अष्टादशशौखिनीयुक्तः ह्रस्वत्वम् आर्षम् चपितः यः हर ऊरु ऊरुभारः ऊरु ऊरुर्भारः भुवः अयं कियान् अत्यल्प इत्यर्थः. Lord Krishna considered that the burden that had already been destroyed was nothing, very little. Yasman madam shaihi pradyumnadibhi hetubhutehi durvishaham balamaste. There is still the great strength of the Yadu dynasty born of myself. Pradyumna and the others who were causes for the expansion of the Yadu dynasty. Aste balam iti asya ayam bhava. This is the implication here. Bhubharaha tava vyakti bahulyena nasyam. Parvata samudradinam tatra prachurya. The burden of the earth cannot be understood in terms of the number of by a consideration of an increase in population, because the earth has an abundant number of mountains, oceans, and so on, and they're also burden. Burden means something heavy. They're already heavy. Into dharmika prachuryena eva tatra bharasya. But when there is an abundance of adharmic population, then they would constitute an unnecessary weight which needs to be removed. Tatra astam tavat pradyumnadi mad amshanam yadumatranam paramadharmikatvam eva uktam. Okay, but Pradyumna and Krishna's amshas, practically everyone in the Yadu dynasty, they were most dharmic. This has already been stated. Brahmanyanam, Vadanyanam, this is a mistake. Brahmanyanam, Vadanyanam, Nityam Riddhopasevinam, Viprashapa Kathamabhut, Vrishninam Krishna Chetasam Ityadam. This is declared in statements like in the 11th canto. So the statement will come. How is it possible for the Vrishnis whose consciousness was always fixed on Krishna? They were obedient to the Brahmanas, they were magnanimous and charitable, and they were always engaged in service to their superiors. How is it possible that they were cursed by the Vipras? Shayyasana, Tana, Pakridasna, Na, Shanadishu, Na Viduh Santamatmanam, Vrishnaya, Krishna Chetasa. Then there are other statements, 10th canto. While sleeping, sitting, walking, talking, engaged in sports, bathing, eating, and all other activities, the Vrishnis, they were not even conscious of themselves. They were conscious of Krishna. Ityado. तस्मान् यदत्र दुर्विषहत्वेन भारतोच्यते तत्खलु तां त्यक्त्वा केवलस्य मम अन्तर्धाने तेषां मद्वियोगेन पीडार्तानां परार्धसङ्ख्यानां संगात् पृथिव्यां पीडिता स्यात् इति एव गम्यते. So then the logical conclusion would be that Lord Krishna thought that the unbearable burden that is discussed here, that refers to the fact that after Lord Krishna leaves Prithvi and goes back to his own abode, then out of separation from me, all of them would be very much in pain and they would be in great distress. And they are of such great numbers that Prithvi would be hurt And this is what is meant by the unbearable burden. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. तत्र हेतुः कियानिति यतः द्रोणादिभिर्मूलैः okay, wait, this is all already covered. ननु भूभारस्तावत् व्यक्तिबाहुल्येन न स्यात्. Repeating Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu's points. तत्र प्राचुर्यात् किन्तु धार्मिक प्राचुर्येण एव ते च अधार्मिका भगवता समाहृता एव. The Supreme Lord himself had destroyed the adharmic people, and there was an abundance of dharmic people. न च यदुकुलस्य अधार्मिकत्वं वाच्यं भगवत् परिकररूपत्वात्. It is not possible to say that the dynasty of Yadus were adharmika because they were directly the associates of Bhagavan. And then he quotes the same two verses. Atra uchyate. So in this regard, bharo hi vividho bhavati. There are two types of distresses. Dukkha-rupaha, sukha-rupaha cha. One type of burden is a burden of pain. Another type of burden is the burden of happiness. Prathamo dussaha, dvitiyastu susaha eva. The first one is unbearable. The second one is very much bearable. Just like a wife accepts the burden of her husband, or a mother accepts the burden of her child, yes, just as a merchant, on his head he has his wealth, that also he bears. किंच अल्पबलेन जनेन स्वस्मात् अतिबहुलः सुखरूपः अपि भारः वोढुं न शक्यते. यथा परमधार्मिकस्य महाभागवतस्य तपोबलाधिक्यम् आविष्कुर्वतः ध्रुवस्यापि भारः पृथिव्याः. Even though Dhruva was supremely dharmic, he was a Mahabhagavata, and when he was revealing his austerity, strength, and Dhruva also was experienced by Prithvi to be a burden. This will be stated in 4.8.79. यदा च भगवतापि स्वबलम् आविष्क्रियते तदा तस्य परमानन्दरूपस्य अपि भारः न वोढुं शक्यते. Even when the Supreme Lord reveals his strength, then even though his form is one of supreme bliss, then Prithvi cannot handle that burden. Yatha Bhishma Stuto, as in Bhishma's prayers, 1.9.37. The earth was moving when Krishna was rushed towards him. Simha-virbhavecha. And when Nrsimha appeared also, 7.8.34. Ataha atra yadyapi yadukulasya bharah prithviya bharattvena na abhimanyate. Even though Prithvi Devi does not consider the Yadu dynasty to be a weighty burden. यथा सुकुमार्यापि स्त्रिया बहुस्वर्ण रत्नत्वाद्याभरणहारः. Just as a young tender woman, she wears lots of gold and jewels as ornaments which are very heavy. तदपि प्रेमवता तत् कान्तेन तत् अंगेभ्यः कश्चन कश्चन उत्सेवादौ आगन्तुक एव आभरणहारः निष्कास्यते स्थाप्यते. And still sometimes the husband, that woman's beloved husband, removes those ornaments, keeps them away. सर्वदा उपयोगी तथैव अंशावतरण समये नित्य परिकररूपेषु यादवादिषु ये देव आदयः अंशाः प्रविष्टाः ते एव द्वारकातः निष्क्रम्य प्रभासे उपसंहृतः. So like that, the Devamshas who were within the Yadavas at the time of leaving this world, Krishna removed them and placed them in Prabhasa. Okay, wait, there's something here in chat box. Mahabharata written by which author? We can read. Mahabharata is written by Vyasadeva. But I'm sure you're not asking about that. You're asking about some other edition. In ISKCON, there are two editions of Mahabharata. There are two in English. One by Purna Pragya Prabhu and another by Krishna Dharma Prabhu. There are two. The surest path to happiness is to live by the principles laid down by the Lord and not disobey these established laws which are enacted in the Vedas and the Puranas for the forgetful living entity. This is some quote. Here, why Prabhupada writing Vedas and Puranas, but why not directly Bhagavad Gita? Why? The Vedas and Puranas, they are the standard literature. That obviously includes the Itihasas, it includes Vedangas, it includes everything. This is indicative. It's not exhaustive. Okay, let's get to this purport. It is a wrong theory that due to an increase in population, the world becomes overburdened and therefore there are wars and other annihilating processes. The earth is never overburdened. The heaviest mountains and oceans on the face of the earth hold more living entities than there are human beings, and they are not overburdened. If a census were to be taken of all the living beings on the surface of the earth, certainly it would be found that the number of humans is not even 5% of the total number of living beings. If the birth rate of human beings is increasing, then the birth rate of other living entities is increasing proportionately. The birth rate of lower animals, beasts, aquatics, birds, etc., is far greater than that of human beings. There is an adequate arrangement for food for all the living beings all over the earth by the order of the Supreme Lord, and he can arrange more and more if there is actually a disproportionate increase of living beings. Therefore, there is no question of an increase in population causing a burden. The earth becomes overburdened due to dharma planning or irregular discharge of the Lord's desire. The Lord appeared on the earth to curb the increase in miscreants and not the increase in population, as is wrongly put forward by the mundane economists. When Lord Krishna appeared, there had been a great increase in miscreants who had violated the desire of the Lord. The material creation is meant for fulfilling the desire of the Lord, and his desire is that the conditioned souls who are unfit to enter into the kingdom of God have a chance to improve their conditions for entering. The entire process of cosmic arrangement is intended just to give a chance for the conditioned souls to enter the kingdom of God, and there is an adequate arrangement for their maintenance by the nature of the Lord. Therefore, although there may be a great increase in population on the surface of the earth, if the people are exactly in line with God consciousness and are not miscreants, such a burden on the earth is a source of pleasure for her. There are two kinds of burdens. There is the burden of the beast and the burden of love. The burden of the beast is unbearable, but the burden of love is a source of pleasure. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti describes the burden of love very practically. He says that the burden of the husband on the young wife, the burden of the child on the lap of the mother, and the burden of wealth on the businessman, although actually burdens from the viewpoint of heaviness, are sources of pleasure. And in the absence of such burdensome objects, one may feel the burden of separation, which is heavier to bear than the actual burden of love. When Lord Krishna referred to the burden of the Yadu dynasty on the earth, he referred to something different from the burden of the beast. The large numbers of family members born of Lord Krishna counted to some millions and were certainly a great increase in the population of the earth. But because all of them were expansions of the Lord himself by his transcendental plenary expansions, they were a source of great pleasure for the earth. When the Lord referred to them in connection with the burden on the earth, he had in mind their imminent disappearance from the earth. All the members of the family of Lord Krishna were incarnations of different demigods. They were to disappear from the surface of the earth along with the Lord. When he referred to the unbearable heaviness on the earth in connection with the Yadu dynasty, he was referring to the burden of their separation. Srila Jiva Goswami confirms this inference. 15. Mito yadesham bhavita vivado madhva madatamra vilochananam Naisham vadhopaya yanatonyo mayudyate tardadhate swayamsma. When they quarrel among themselves, influenced by intoxication with their eyes red like copper because of drinking madhu. Because of drinking means because of intoxicated drinking. Then only will they disappear. Otherwise, it will not be possible. On my disappearance, this incident will take place. Nachatra anya upaya prabhavati. Kintu madhuna ya amada sarvatah madaha. Tena atavara vilochana esham vivadaha. Yada bhavishyati. There is no other way for this other than to get them to quarrel among themselves. Tata yaneva esham vadhopaya. This is the only way by which they can be destroyed. अतः अन्यः नास्ति एकात्मनः अपि मयि युध्यते सति स्वयमेव विवादेन अन्तर्दधीरम् इति अर्थः. This and all is elaborated in the 11th canto. There's no one was fit to destroy the Yadus because they had all surrendered themselves unto Lord Krishna's lotus feet. Therefore, Krishna considered that an arrangement should be made by which they would fight amongst themselves and destroy themselves. These are, of course, the Devamshas. The Nitya Parshadas, they were directly transferred. When Krishna disappeared, they also disappeared. But the Devamshas, they quarreled. तत्र अन्येषामिव न येषां समाहारः सम्भवति किन्तु प्रकार अन्तरेण एव इति स्वगतमाः. So, Lord Krishna, this is a statement of the Lord to himself. They cannot be destroyed the way others are destroyed. So some other method has to be adopted. अधुना य आसम्यक् मदः तेन अताम्रनेत्राणां विवादः तथापि येषां वधरूप उपाय न भवति किन्तु अतः अर्थात् अन्ये एव यान् वधसदृशः न तु वधः इत्यर्थः. तेन लोकाः वस्तुतः तु अवधमेव परस्परं वधं रक्ष्यन्ति इत्यर्थः. वास्तवं वस्तुतः तु स्पष्टमाह मयि युध्यते इमान् उपसंजिहीर्ष्येषु सति स्वयमेव इमे अंतर्धास्यन्ते स्म इति निश्चयेन. On my disappearance, this incident will take place. This is Krishna's plan, that even though they cannot actually be killed, there will be a semblance of them being killed. Very fine arguments will be presented in the 11th canto. We'll see that when we come to that one. The Lord and his associates appear and disappear by the will of the Lord. They are not subjected to the laws of material nature. No one was able to kill the family of the Lord, nor was there any possibility of their natural death by the laws of nature. The only means, therefore, for their disappearance was the make show of a fight amongst themselves, as if brawling in intoxication due to drinking. That so-called fighting would also take place by the will of the Lord. Otherwise, there would be no cause for their fighting. Just as Arjuna was made to be illusioned by family affection and thus the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, so the Yadu dynasty was made to be intoxicated by the will of the Lord and nothing more. The devotees and associates of the Lord are completely surrendered souls. Thus, they are transcendental instruments in the hands of the Lord and can be used in any way the Lord desires. The pure devotees also enjoy such pastimes of the Lord because they want to see him happy. Devotees of the Lord never assert independent individuality. On the contrary, they utilize their individuality in pursuit of the desires of the Lord, and this cooperation of the devotees with the Lord makes a perfect scene of the Lord's 16. Evam sanchil bhagavan swarajye jab nandaya sasu adhuratarsayam. Lord Shri Krishna, thus thinking to himself, established Maharaj Yudhishthira in Lord Shri Krishna himself, established Maharaj Yudhishthira in order to show the ideal of piety. So Krishna's thoughts are spelled out in two slokas. So when Krishna gradually, when he was thinking along these lines, he established Yudhishthira as the king. Purundhata Stapitaha Punardhata Rakshitaha. First he established and then he protected him. 17. Uttarayam Dhrita Puro Vamsha Sadhabhi Manyuna Savai Dramyastra Sampushta Punar Bhagavata Dhritaha. The embryo of Puru's descendant, begotten by the great hero Abhimanyu, in the womb of Uttara, his wife, was burnt by the weapon of the son of Drona. But later he was again protected by the Lord. Vritaha. He was protected. Ahitaha, Vritaha, Kshitaha. The embryonic body of Parikshit, which was forming after Uttara's impregnation by Abhimanyu, the great hero, was burnt by the Brahmastra of Ashwatthama, but a second body was given by the Lord within the womb. This happened in a split second. So therefore, from the first canto, you cannot develop the impression that anything happened to Parikshit at all. And thus the descendant of Puru was saved. This incident is the direct proof that the body and the living entity, the spiritual spark, are different. When the living entity takes shelter in the womb of a woman through the injection of the semen of a man, that's an emulsification of the man's and woman's discharges, and thus a body is formed the size of a pea, gradually developing into a complete body. But if the developing embryo is destroyed in some way or other, the living entity has to take shelter in another body in the womb of another woman. The particular living entity was selected to be the descendant of Maharaj Puru or the Pandavas was not an ordinary living entity. By the superior will of the Lord, he was destined to be the successor to Maharaj Yudhishthira. Therefore, when Ashwatthama destroyed the embryo of Maharaj Parikshit, when he destroyed Maharaj Parikshit when he was in the form of an embryo, the Lord, by his own internal potency, entered into the womb of Uttara by his splendid portion just to give audience to the future Maharaj Parikshit, who was in great danger. By his appearance within the womb, the Lord encouraged the child and gave him complete protection in a new body by his omnipotency, by his power of omnipresence. He was present both inside and outside of Uttara and other members of the Pandava family. 18. Ayajayat dharmasutam ashwamedhais tribhir vibhu sopikshma manujay rakshan reme krishnam anugataha. The Supreme Lord induced the son of Dharma to perform 3 horse sacrifices. And Maharaj Yudhishthira, constantly following Krishna, the personality of God, had protected and enjoyed the earth, assisted by his younger brothers. Maharaj Yudhishthira was the ideal monarchical representative on the earth because he was a constant follower of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. As stated in the Vedas, Ishopanishad, the Lord is a proprietor of the entire manifested cosmic creation, which presents a chance for the conditioned souls to revive their eternal relationship with the Lord and thus go back to Godhead, back home. The whole system of the material world is arranged with that program and plan. Anyone who violates the plan is punished by the laws of nature, which is acting by the direction of the Supreme Lord. Maharaj Yudhishthira was installed on the throne of the earth as a representative of the Lord. The king is always expected to be the representative of the Lord. Perfect monarchy necessitates representation of the supreme will of the Lord. And Maharaj Yudhishthira was the ideal monarch on this supreme principle. Both the king and the subjects were happy in the discharge of worldly duties, and thus protection of the citizens and enjoyment of natural life with full cooperation of material nature followed in the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira and his worthy descendants like Maharaj Parikshit. 19. Bhagavan api Vishwatma Lokaveda Pathanugaha Kamasi Shive Dwarvatyam Asakta Sankhyamasthitaha. Simultaneously, the personality of Godhead enjoyed life in the city of Dwaraka strictly in conformity with the Vedic customs of society. He was situated in detachment and knowledge as enunciated by the Sankhya system of philosophy. Sankhya. Madhvacharya quotes from a scripture named Adhyatma. Kevalam Bhagavad Gyanam Sankhyamityaphitiyate. Pure knowledge pertaining to Bhagavan is referred to as Sankhya. Sankhya Prakriti Purusha Vivekam. Here, Sankhya refers to distinct understanding of the natures of Prakriti and Purusha. Bhagavan apiti कृतकृत्यतायां जातायां वैराग्यलीला प्रकाशिता इति अर्थः. And the personality of Godhead, Bhagavan api, the personality of Godhead also. He became situated in detachment and knowledge. This indicates that when all of his purposes were fulfilled, then he manifested the pastime of detachment and renunciation, internal detachment and external renunciation. Panchama Shashthe Aishwarye Dyotayati Bhagavan api. The fifth and sixth opulences, they are being revealed here. Vishwasi antaryami iva asaktaha. Lokavedeti lokavedayoh anishiddhaneva kaman sukharupan indradibhihi upanayattvena preshitan sishive bubhujye. So the Supreme Lord, like the super soul of the universe, he enjoyed various forms of happiness which were not forbidden um, in the Vedas or in the worldly customs which followed the Vedas. So he was not attached. Asaktaha. Asaktaha appears here. Asaktaha, without being attached. Atra asakta iti vairagyam, sankhya iti gyeyam. Jnanam. It should be jnanam. Sankhya iti jnanam. So he was situated in detachment and knowledge. There's something in chat box. What is the need to enter into the womb for the Lord, for is already present in the heart? Uh, why didn't why didn't he protect from there? So when it says that he entered into the womb, he's all pervasive. He's there with the child, inside the child, outside the child also. But it is a pastime that he goes to protect them. He protect his children. Parikshit was also a devotee, no? Otherwise, how can he be born to the Pandavas? And he is going to become the hero of Bhagavatam, the recipient of Bhagavatam. It's a pastime of the Lord. In that case, then we can argue why Krishna protects anyone in the external sense at any point in time. Why does he even do that? He does that as a pastime. Because he's all pervasive, anything he can just kill Ravana because he's the super soul of Ravana. If he leaves Ravana's body, then Ravana's soul will also leave that body. So then Ravana would die. Why doesn't he do something like that? That is what is meant by pastime. We will actually go and follow the customs of human beings and we will kill Ravana. Because only then we will learn then what to do, what not to do. Meanwhile, Maharaj Yudhishthira while Maharaj Yudhishthira was the emperor of the earth, Lord Shri Krishna was the king of Dwaraka and was known as Dwarakadhish. Like other subordinate kings, he was under the regime of Maharaj Yudhishthira. Although Lord Shri Krishna is the supreme emperor of the entire creation, while he was on this earth, he never violated the principles of the Vedic injunctions because they are the guide for human life. Regulated human life according to the Vedic principles, which are based on the system of knowledge called Sankhya philosophy, is a real way of enjoyment of the necessities of life. Without such knowledge, detachment, and custom, the so-called human civilization is no more than an animal society of eat, drink, be merry, and enjoy. The Lord was acting freely as he willed, yet by his practical example, he taught not to lead a life which goes against the principles of detachment and knowledge. Attainment of knowledge and detachment, as very elaborately discussed in Sankhya philosophy, is the real perfection of life. Knowledge means to know that the mission of the human form of life is to end all the miseries of material existence. See, this is a theme that Prabhupada often brings up. To end all the miseries of material existence. That means we should stop engaging in activities which will inevitably lead to material miseries. See, we are always human beings, not just human beings, all souls pursue happiness only. We don't pursue unhappiness unless one is in tamaguna. Okay. But when we understand that certain activities inevitably are going to bring about misery or increase the misery, then to become detached from those activities is what is known as cultivation of detachment. And that in spite of having to fulfill the bodily necessities in a regulated way, one must be detached from such animal life. Fulfilling the demands of the body is animal life, and fulfilling the mission of the spirit soul is a human mission. 20. स्निग्धस्मितावलोकेन वाचा पीयूष कल्पया चरित्रेणानवद्येन श्रीनिकेतेन चात्मना. He was there in his transcendental body, the residence of the goddess of fortune, with his usual gentle and sweetly smiling face, his nectarian words, and his flawless character. It appears that this, first of all, this is not a complete Sanskrit sentence. It appears to be the first part of a sentence, which will be completed in the next verse. Here, for some reason, both of them have been numbered as 20. So let me.
No, in the new document, it is numbered as 2020.
New document, you have another version.
I already sent you, I think. Didn't I? Sometimes, if previously you were using the new one, again you came back to the old one.
So many ones, I just do a search and whichever one comes. I should read the old ones and use only the. It's like a 2021 actually. It's 2021. 2021. It's 2021. I should use the latest version. So yes, in this Vinshakampaya. Andre Mahapravaha. It's also nice. It will not form also like a stream of nectar. Three verses 20, 21, 22. Some sequence of a certain sequence which is brought up. Syntheti Makkam. Of that, 2021 constitutes a single sentence. Syntheti. Syntheti. Maya Shakti Vilasa Ekasya Asakti. Chik Shakti Vilasa Asakti. Vidya. With Maya Shakti, this demonstration of his lack of attachment, whereas his dealings with spiritual potency is his attachment to them. So there's personal potencies. Supreme Lord, he exhibited four forms of sweetness. Sweetness of his glands, sweetness of his speech, sweetness of his spiritual pastimes, and the sweetness of his beautiful form. So that nectar, he splashed it on. Even the ones situated in Devaloka, or to speak of the Yadus, amongst them his wives. He spent time with his wives in festive conjugal pastimes. Because these appointed queens, they were Krishna's own energies. They are part of his own personality. They are actually his spiritual energies. Anda Prabhasa Khande, Shivagauri Sambhavya, Bhakti Mahatmya Drishtam. That is noted in the description of the devotees of the gopis and others, found in the conversation between Shiva and Gauri. In the Prabhasa Khanda Skanda begins with statement Shodashaiva Sahasrani Lokyastana Samagata Lakshamanekam Tatha Shashtir Vide Krishna Sutta 16,000 60 lakhs of Krishna's sons. Amseva Mata Krishna Paramatma Janagana Prasekta Shaktayogi Shodashaiva Pratikita Devogi Mata Krishna Amarupas Dasmita. Krishna is the swan-like super soul, Lord Janardana. And oh Devi, these Shaktis belong to him. There are 16 that are celebrated. Krishna is considered to be like the moon. They are considered to be like the different phases of the moon. So, different illuminations of the moon. Atra Visheshaha Dashame Prapanchi Ishyate. This will be elaborately dealt 10th canto. The previous verse, it is described that Lord Krishna being situated in the thoughts of Sankhya philosophy is detached from all kinds of matter. The present verse, it is described that he is incidents of the goddess of fortune. These two things are not at all contradictory. Lord Krishna is detached from the variativeness of the inferior nature, but he is in eternal bliss from enjoyment of the spiritual nature of this eternal potency. People from the knowledge cannot understand this distinction between external and internal potencies. The Bhagavad Gita, the internal potency is described as Parama. The Purana also, the internal potency of Vishnu is described as Parashakti. The Lord is never detached from the association of Parashakti. Shakti and her manifestations are described in the Brahma Samhita 5.37. It's Ananda Chinmaya Mahavidapi. All is eternal, joyful, and cognizant in the ways derived from such transcendental bliss. Negation of the very wickedness of the inferior energy does not necessitate negation of the positive transcendence of the spiritual world. For the Lord's gentleness, his smile, his character, everything related to all transcendent. Such manifestations of the internal potency of the reality of creation. The shadows only a temporary representation on which everyone with proper knowledge must be attached. Lord enjoyed his pastimes both in this world and in other worlds, higher planets, specifically in the association of the other dynasty. And leisure hours offered by right, he enjoyed the friendship of conjugal love with women. Everyone names his wives. So, in Vedic culture, these things are all well regulated. Nighttime, this evening after sunset and nighttime, is the time for conjugal activities. It's all regulated. It's also demonstrated, regulated also. So, message Pati. Something in the chat box. All the performing devotions of this, we don't get happiness, what would be the reason? Offenses.
We're not able to hear you somehow.
Can you hear me now? Am I audible?
Yes.
I have no idea why. There's something in the chat box here. Although performing devotional service, if we don't get happiness, what could be the reason? The reason is offenses, sinful activities, other forbidden activities. It means we are not progressing. Probably it means we are regressing. We need to go back and check. Happiness comes from inside. How to realize it? You have to follow the instructions step by step. Vacho vegam manasah krodha vegam. That is the first step. We have to execute the items of sadhana bhakti in such a manner that the urges subside and we are able to tolerate, and then move to the next step, atyahara, prayasa, and so on. So that we should be clear about these things. Purport. The Lord enjoyed in this world with his pure devotees. Although he is the personality of Godhead and is transcendental to all material attachment, he nevertheless exhibited much attachment for his pure devotees on the earth, as well as for the demigods who engage in his service in the heavenly planets as powerful delegated directors in the management of all material activities. He displayed special attachment for his family members, the Yadus, as well as for his 16,000 warriors who had the opportunity to meet him in the leisure hours of night. All these attachments of the Lord are manifestations of his internal potency, of which the external potency is only a shadow representation. In the Skanda Purana, Vasakhanda, in the topics discussed between Lord Shiva and Gauri, there is confirmation of the manifestation of Lord Krishna's internal potency. There is mention of the Lord's meeting with 16,000 cowherd damsels, although he is the Hamsa, transcendental super soul, maintainer of all living entities. The 16,000 cowherd damsels are a display of 16 varieties of internal potency. This will be more elaborately explained in the 10th canto. It is said there that Lord Krishna is like the moon, and the cowherd damsels are like the stars around the moon. 22. Tasyevam ravamanasya samvatsaraganan bahum grihamedeshu yogeshu viragasama jayata. The Lord was thus engaged in household life for many, many years, yet at last his detachment from ephemeral sex life was fully manifested. Sarvadapi vraktasan bhasyativa viragivat kadachitkah kutastasya lokashikshartam ishyate iti padme. Madhvacharya quotes from Padma Purana. Even though the Supreme Lord is always detached, he appears as if he is greatly attached. Sometimes. Where is the question of that in him? This is all for the world lesson. Tenapi viraga pradarshita. So the Supreme Lord also demonstrated vairagya. Grihamedeshu, grihadharmeshu. So the Supreme Lord the various duties of household. Kama bhoga upayeshu. And the company of his wives.
Again, your voice is
And
breaking.
while enjoying the company of his wives, viragaha, audasinyam jatam. He became detached. He became indifferent to all of that. Grihameshu gahastya uchita dharma anushtaneshu vairagyam audasinyam. So the duties that he had taken on for household life were the ones that were appropriate for garhasthya or household. Grihamedeshu yogeshu rajogunamaya margeshu tad audacemia or indifference towards the various duties of householders. These duties are part of the duties in the karma marga, the pathway of karma, which are in Rajoguna. And this it's a further reference to all the different features of enjoyment that come about in the karmas. Samyak jayata iti sarvakalameva sa asideva. Samajayata comes, which means fully out. Some indicates fully ajayata. Sarvakalameva sa asideva. At all it was there, certainly. Tadanim tu atispashti babhuva. But that detachment was extremely clearly visible. Guneshu asanga vairagyam iti vairagyasya lakshana gunatiteshu shuddha sattvamayeshu rukmanyadi vilaseshu vairagyam na vyakhyaya. It should not be misunderstood that Lord Krishna became detached in his pastimes. with Rukmini and others, who were all fully in Shuddha Sattva, beyond the three modes of material nature completely. Even though the Lord is never attached to any kind of material sex life, as a universal teacher, he remained a householder for many, many years, just to teach others how one should live in householder life. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that the word samajayata means fully exhibited. In all his activities while present on the earth, the Lord exhibited detachment. This was fully displayed when he wanted to teach by example that one should not remain attached to household life for all the days of one's life. One should naturally develop detachment as a matter of course. The Lord's detachment from household life does not indicate detachment from his eternal associates, the transcendental comfort damsels. But the Lord desired to end his so-called attachment to the three modes of material nature. He can never be detached from the service of his transcendental associates like Rukmini and other goddesses of fortune, as described in the Brahma Samhita 5.29. Lakshmi Sahasrashata Sambhamasya Vyamanam. Okay, I'll stop at that. So tomorrow I have to start with text 23. 3.23. We will close with that. Vanshakaputarvescha, Kripasindubhyeva cha, Patitanapavamebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.